Hello, YouTube land. This is Brent Son coming to you from Lexington, Kentucky, the Bluegrass State. I had recorded this interview once already, and the audio didn't turn out so good, so I recorded it again. And this is a cryptid story from Lynn, and it seems to be something similar to an infrasound type scenario, and well, you'll hear the story here in a minute, but it's a very interesting type story. And then also a Thunderbird or Pterodactyl type encounter that is going to be also told, that's interesting. And I've been collecting these type stories for a while, and I think that the Thunderbird stuff or the big bird pterodactyl kind of stuff is very interesting. And I didn't really know what to think of these things when I first started collecting them, but there's just too many of them, and they're not, they're not something to be dismissed too easily, I don't think. So anyway, I think you all enjoy this. If anyone out there has a story that they want to share, you can contact me at brentson@gmail.com and give me a brief description of your story and contact information. I'll get back to you. So, hope you enjoy this interview with Lynn. Okay, Lynn, I had read your emails here a while back, a couple weeks ago now. We had recorded one show, and the audio didn't turn out so good, so I'm calling you back, and we're going to try this once again. If you would, introduce yourself, and then the area that you live and things like that, and then let's start back with the story with the infrasound and the horse thing. I don't want to give it away, so just kind of introduce yourself and then take us into the story, kind of like you did in the email, because it was very interesting, and I think the fans will really like to hear this.
Okay, well, hi, everyone. I'm Lynn, and this story has been with me for a very long time, and I always wondered about some aspects of it, so here goes. Growing up, my parents were devout hunters and campers and fisher people, so that's what we would do, a lot of that. And when I was about 14 or 15 months old, Mom and Dad went to go do some turkey hunting up in northern Arizona. And I had a little sister that was just an infant at the time, and we were just having a nice family get-together, the four of us, little tiny family up there in the middle of nowhere. Been up there for a couple of days, and Mom had gotten busy with my little sister. And this is how she relates the story to me, that she had gotten busy, and I had wandered off. And, of course, Mom and Dad freak out because I'm a little tiny thing running around in the woods. They go to look for me, and they find me. They find me under this horse, and he's standing between me and this little stream of water. Which was, she said it was a little ways from the campsite. Well, I remember the horse. I remember the nose. What I'm remembering more and more as time goes on, and I think about it, and I'm listening to everybody else's stories of the Bigfoot, is that I remember hearing the water, the come to me water. You have to come to me now. I'm the water, and you want me, and you want to be in me and feel me on your skin. And that's basically what it felt like. I was compelled. And I remember everything got really intense. The colors and everything got really intense around me. And I don't remember the sound, but I know that everything was just really bright. And I don't remember walking into the woods. I don't remember how far I went. I don't remember anything. The next thing I remember is this horse's nose in my chest, and I'm touching his soft pink nose, and he's looking at me, and I'm holding on to this horse's nose, and I remember his knees, and I remember standing underneath of him, and I don't even remember the water. I'm not even hearing the water anymore. And that's where my parents found me, standing underneath this horse. And this horse was between me and the water. Well, many years later, I'm coming to find out why am I listening to all these Bigfoot stories all the time. So there's a few stories talking about the water feeling like they want to get into a warm bath, and they're taking off their clothes and they're folding them up neatly. And it hit me like 2x4. That's what happened to me. That water drew me away, and that's what had to have happened. And that horse had to have been an intervention. There was nobody around. There was no farmhouses, cabins, nobody that we knew was around there. We were just out in the middle of nowhere. Anyway, it was amazing. I don't remember if I cried when they took me away from my horse or not, but that started a lifelong love affair with horses, and I think ever since that time, a lifelong affair of the supernatural.
Right. Well, the reason I thought it was so interesting was that I had made a video about a guy who was doing some mountain bike riding, and as he was coming down this trail, he stopped in this particular spot. You know, had been raining a bunch, and there was water coming across the path here and there. But when he stopped, he heard growling, and the growling sound turned into running water. And then all of a sudden he felt warm, and he was wanting to go towards this water. And so he was taking his clothes off, folding them, trying to get them into this backpack. But it ended up being his jacket was too big, and he couldn't get the jacket into the backpack. And then his friends caught up with him. They splashed through a puddle, and it snapped him out of it. And then he heard growling again. And the first thing he said was, "The growling." And they're like, "What?" You know, they couldn't figure out what the heck, you know, why you sitting there taking off your clothes and what have you. But it seemed to be an infrasound type thing. And he said it was kind of coming from up above him on, I think, like his left side. And the left side of the trail was basically a downhill that went to a river. And you know, this up in the tree. So it seemed like the thing was up in the tree, throwing an infrasound type thing out at him that was making him feel warm. He was, you know, the growling turns into water and things like that. So, you know, it's that's what yours reminded me of. And then, but then you have some kind of other animal. I mean, how many people have ever been out in the woods and run into a white horse with a pink nose, and it would, you know, keep you from going to a creek, you know, or getting into the water? So that, to me, that just, it seems like the horse was too perfect with that nose being pink, where it was kind of alluring. You're touching it, so it's got this touch factor, the sight factor, the, you know, all the things that would need to be there to try to draw your attention and keep you to this horse. And you're standing underneath the horse. That to me was very incredible. It almost sounds like you had an intervention with something that may not have even been a horse, and that you had some type of cryptid that was luring you to, maybe to the water, or was luring you to, you know, take you, or whatever the purposes would have been. I don't know, but very
Right.
interesting.
Yeah, and that occurred to me too. It's like, okay, aren't most animals scared of those things, and wouldn't they run away? And so that's what I'm thinking, is there had to be some other supernatural force that, you know, did that. I mean, there just can't be any other explanation. In my entire life, I've had stuff like that, you know. So, and when you think back on some of those things, you're like, well, that has to be it. I mean, there's no other explanation. Mom just said she just about died when they found me standing under that horse.
Yeah, imagine. Yeah, I mean, you know, here you are, a little kid, and you're standing underneath a horse that they don't even know where the horse came from. I mean, goodness.
I'm 14 or 15 months old.
Yeah.
You know, I can barely talk.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I've loved horses my entire life. I never owned one, but I would ask every birthday and every Christmas.
Yeah, and where would they have thought this horse came from?
She never really said, but when she would tell me the story, which is funny because why would she keep telling me that? She's told me several stories over and over that have come to be important in my life, and she belongs to Jesus. But I never really asked her, but I used to tell her that I remembered his pink nose, Mom, and I remembered his knees. And she would say, you do? And yeah. But then I didn't have any other questions to ask her because I'd never really thought about it until this time in my life.
Right. Yeah, you just didn't have enough information to even know what the story was.
Right.
Yeah.
It wasn't anything I thought that affected my life, but I see now that I'm probably pretty sure that's the start of everything.
Right.
Well, my mom belonged to Jesus, and she prayed for me and all of the kids our entire life until she passed away. And so I know that there's, that I'm protected.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, that certainly is a very interesting story. That is for sure. Now, you had some other stories, and make sure you're speaking into your phone and you're near your Wi-Fi connection or whatever your connection is that you're using there. Let's just talk about some of your other stories that you have.
Well, I have another story of a cryptid. We all grew up on this cul-de-sac in Phoenix, and there was a bunch of us kids, and we all played all the time in the summer, just barefoot. As soon as the monsoon was over, we were out there in the rain and the water, and we could play fun things like Land of the Giants, and there would be dinosaurs, and the trees would be dinosaurs. And one day we were out there messing around, and some of us were on the front side, and my sister and the neighbor were in the neighbor's backyard. And all of a sudden, they come running out of the backyard through the garage. They're screaming their heads off. The rest of us are all like, what? Very alarmed. And I'm the little mother. I'm the caretaker. I'm like, what's happening? What's happening? What's going on? I mean, they scared me the way they were screaming. White as ghosts. These kids were just pretty much transparent. They were so white.
Right.
Finally, I'm getting it out of my sister and the neighbor, little bits at a time. Some big black thing flew over them and tried to grab them. And they were adamant, and they were freaking out, these two. They went in the house, and they didn't come out for the rest of the day. Couldn't even get any description, but they said it was huge. And I'm like, well, like, was it an owl? Or, we grew up, we knew what was around, what kind of wildlife in our neighborhood, the desert. And she said, no, it was huge. It was huge. And this was broad daylight. She said it's huge and black, and tried to grab us. And that's all I could ever get out of her. And we never talked about it again. She passed away about 5 years ago, and come to think of it, we never discussed it.
Right. You know what? That was one of the surprising things once I started covering the cryptids, was the flying cryptids. I had started getting people saying I have a pterodactyl story, and I thought, man, I don't know if I believe that. It just seems so impossible. But usually the encounters were at night, not always, but typically they were at night. And the pterodactyl was charcoal color, so it would blend into the night sky really well. And these things would attack people. I mean, one of the stories, these guys were fishing in New Jersey, and the thing was flapping down, and it had a huge wingspan, like, 18, 20 feet, and was just, trying to pick one of the kids up, and they were all hitting it with their fishing poles, trying to get away from it. And they were fishing, and so it started making sense to me because it was near rivers. A lot of these missing persons cases come up around rivers. Water is one of the themes in it that had to be for David Pilates to even cover it. And that's just one of the things anyway. And I think that they fly down near these rivers. They follow the rivers, and them being charcoal black, coming out mostly at night. I just think that they would be very stealthy, and when people see them, because I've had probably 4 or 5 stories now, and these people aren't lying. I don't believe they're all. Maybe one of them is, and I'm not picking up on it right, but these people had encounters with a huge pterodactyl type black charcoal flying dinosaur, and I kind of related it to the biblical account, because a lot of people think, oh, dinosaurs went extinct millions of years ago.
No.
If the biblical account is true, then they used to call those dragons. They called them dragons.
And behemoth.
Yeah, they called them stuff like that. They didn't call them dinosaurs. Dinosaurs are a fairly new word that we put on stuff, but typically a dinosaur would have been referred to as a dragon. And, so you have all these mythological stories about dragon slayers and things like that, and these battles with dragons. And so it started, making some sense. And so from there, you can kind of start searching the mystery out. And so I believe that, and, I've had too many accounts of it been reported to me about these pterodactyl type, huge charcoal black, because in the drawings and pictures, that we see of the artist rendering of these cryptids or these dinosaur type creatures, they never really make them black.
No.
Charcoal,
They make them colorful.
And they don't know what color they were.
No.
Some believe they even some of them had feathers, some of the dinosaurs. And,
well, they're like the bones are hollow, just like birds.
Right, yeah. So
why would they have feathers?
Right. So I believe that. That's amazing. And I've had a lot of different stories
all around us, and we just don't notice it.
Right. Now you're cutting out really bad again, so whatever, you try to get back towards your reception there. And
okay, is that better?
Yeah, it's better now. Cool.
Okay, yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I believe that they are probably all, around us all the time, and we just don't notice them.
Yeah. And some people don't want to report it when they do see something.
Right, or they don't believe they just can't believe it because they have no reference, any kind of frame of reference to, put it with.
Yeah, and plus they're told that that's not possible, so they try to rationalize it away. I must hallucinate it or whatever.
Right, I always didn't like that when people, that they didn't understand that the supernatural is just like part of this world, and they don't understand that it's a rich world, and it comes into ours, and if you pay attention, you can really see a lot of it if you know what to look for.
Yeah, I mean, but a pterodactyl, it's not even a supernatural. It's a real thing,
It's not. But then we've been told, by the powers that be how it is, and that can't exist.
Yeah.
But then, they get the coelacanth and they catch that extinct fish. So it's, so if there's that, there has to be others.
Right. And then when I think about the cryptids that can use infrasound, the reason I think that they can use infrasound is because they are possibly, a product of the Genesis 6 stuff, which would be partly, a supernatural with a flesh mix from the earth, the corruption of a certain whatever flesh it was, and therefore they would have some of the vocal systems of the supernatural creature, which are still physical creatures. Now, that's the one thing I've really been trying to show people in the scriptures, that an angel had a body. They had flesh and everything. The glory was different, but they had pipes and timbrels, so they had different vocal mechanisms that were beyond what we do. So they could do these creative type things with their voice mechanism. But they ate, and so if they were here and hanging out, they would have to eat, and they would have to hunt,
Yeah.
and they would have to do whatever to eat. So, anyway,
Yeah, that's probably why a lot of them hang out at the rivers and stuff, because, the animals come to the rivers, people come to the rivers, everything comes to the rivers.
right. You're cutting out again, so.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I want to eliminate that as much as possible because I thought your story was really interesting, and in the last interview it did that a little too much, and I let it go too long. So if it does that, I'll let you know, and we'll try to remedy it real quick. All right. Well, yeah. To me, I think that all of the stuff you're sharing there is very believable, very interesting. So what else do you want to share?
Oh, well, that's pretty much my cryptid stories that I can think of or remember. And I'm wondering if maybe some of that sound that they put out is something to mess with your memory.
Yeah, I wondered that too. Well, I know that it can have an effect on the memory because I've known people that have went squatching, going Bigfoot hunting, and they got hit with infrasound, and they almost were home before they remembered even leaving. It's like, what happened, that kind of stuff. I know Scott Carpenter had one experience like that. He remembered sitting there looking at a Sasquatch. And the reason he ended up remembering it is because he had it on video. He's like, I don't remember walking off the trail here. And then he was, and then his son called him. And then when he seen it on video, he wasn't like showing the Sasquatch, but he remembered standing there looking at a Bigfoot, and the phone rang. Then next thing you know, he went back to the trail and was walking back down the trail, and then that's the next thing he remembered. So there seems to be some kind of something that goes on. Who knows, man? It's incredible. But he had it on video of that happening to him.
That's crazy. That's like, that's lucky that he got it on video too, because then that ought to tell you, you got to be careful. Those things are getting aggressive.
Yeah.
And I believe they may be soldiers that will be inhabited by humans, like the Bible says, and giants will come to fulfill my wrath. So that could be a possibility.
Yeah, there's one thing in Revelations that I talked about where when the creature comes out of the bottomless pit, he will be given authority over the beast of the earth to kill a fifth part of mankind. And I'm thinking, well, what would beasts be that are on the earth? And surely if there was such thing as Dogman and Bigfoot and things like that, they would qualify as beasts, you would think. Unless they're saying lions and tigers and stuff like that. I don't know, but, very interesting stuff.
Yeah, maybe those too. Maybe all the animals. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know for sure, but I was looking into the scriptures to see what beast, what typically it meant, and it typically was a humanoid type creature with an animal type quality, like the beasts that are before the throne. Some of them had like an eagle head and human body, or a bull's head and a human body, kind of like what you would think is mythological creatures. So some type of creature like a Sasquatch or a Dogman, or you would think for sure that would be in the same category as what the scriptures refer to as beast.
Right, and those reptile creatures in Egypt on the walls and stuff.
Right, yeah. Yeah, and those type of things are real. No matter, I don't care if people want to believe it or not. I know that I've encountered things that I was told weren't real, and they darn sure were. And I've even had other witnesses see some of it. Was standing there looking at the same thing, and I know we weren't both hallucinating. So anyway, it's hard to convince some folks of it, and maybe it's better that some people don't believe it and they don't have to think about it, and they can go to work every day and raise their families and do the normal life, and it might be better.
It might be, because I think some people just aren't built for that. you know.
Right, yeah. So I'm not knocking anybody that don't believe it. Maybe it's a better thing. It's a better way to live. But it was forced on
Right,
me. I didn't have a choice. So
right, right, right. It's, well, I think it's, well, I don't feel like it's anything like the supernatural has been forced on me. I think it just is.
yeah, right, yeah. But you know what I'm saying. I've had the supernatural encounters starting at 5 years old that I
Right.
just couldn't deny, and they're physical encounters too. I mean, they're very scary. And then the cryptid encounter stuff was a little bit later. Um, but I didn't choose it; it just happened. And but I mean, there's a lot of people I've talked to; they've never had nothing like that happen to them. And
Right,
and
right.
and it's probably good. They just live normal lives. They go to work, and they got their home over here, and they got their family, and they seems like nice families, and so good for them.
Yeah,
As long as I hope they know the Lord, and to me, I think that's the most important thing is that you
that
know the
is.
Lord, and because someday we're gonna have to meet the Lord, and you want to make sure you know Him.
Yeah.
That's my opinion, and I believe that I'm right. That's
And
period.
everything's going to go away on this earth anyway, so it'd be better to be knowing the Lord than to be,
Yeah, right.
you know.
Well, well, I think, Lynn, let's just let the cryptid thing stand on its own. This is
Yeah.
it will be a 30-minute show. If you have some supernatural stuff that goes into a different type of subject matter, you're welcome to, share those things too. Just kind of put some of that together, and we can do that as a separate thing. And that way I can categorize this show into the cryptid category. And um, it just does better if I do it that way. If I mix it up,
I
then
agree.
you don't know what category to place it in. But I really thank you for coming and sharing.
You're very welcome. I'm glad to do it.
All right. Well, I know that the fans appreciate it too, and I have such good fans. Yeah, I know that looked at the comments and stuff, and there's
Hmm.
some of the people that are so appreciative of the shows, and getting to they have fun, listening, and a lot of times it makes their Friday or whatever day it is. It's like, wow, that's awesome. I worked hard all day, and I get to come home and there's a new show, someone sharing something, and
Yeah.
they appreciate you all that come and share. I'll tell you that.
We appreciate you too, Brenton. You do a really good job, and we appreciate you.
Well, thank you, Lynn, and I guess we'll end it here. And everybody out there in YouTube land, if you have a story that you want to share of the Bigfoot, Dogman, or even it can be a supernatural kind of encounter or something that's interesting, if you think it would make a good show, you can email me at brentonson@gmail.com. It's real simple. Brentonson, in the title of the channel here is Brenton Son, all lowercase, at gmail.com. Give me a brief description, give me some contact information, and I will get a hold of you and we'll see what you have. Beyond that, that's all I know to say. Thank you very much. God bless, and we'll catch you on the next video. Bye-bye.